had the greatest job in the world, and that's working with dogs.
Best in Show winner is the French Bulldog.
Winston won the National Dog Show. It was amazing. It was exciting. And to have a dog to be #1 dog in this country, you have to have great nutrition. And I always fed Pro Plan. Just like us, when we eat well, we feel good. And I just love that food and what it's done all these years to all the dogs I've bred and all the dogs I've shown.
Welcome to Pure Dog Talk. I am your host, Laura Reeves, and I have got like the coolest conversation for us today. I was talking to somebody about courting Havanese because I was at their handling. So anyway, and they said, you need to talk to Alice Lawrence from Fuzzy Farms because she's courted everything. And I'm like, genius. So Alice is here to join us today. Alice has been showing dogs for what, 50 some odd years? Yeah.
55 years. Yep.
Oh my God. And so I have always seen Fuzzy Farms and associated it with Pooley, but you have courted like everything. So give us a little, we call it the 411, a little background on what you've been doing with courted breeds for 50 some odd years.
Okay. Well, first we started in Komondors, and we owned Komondors for well over 30 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And shortly after acquiring our first Komondor, we acquired our first Pooley. Mm-hmm. So we had Poolies and Komondors for ever and ever. And while we no longer have Komondors, we still have Poolies. And then in the late 1990s, we acquired our first Havanese, which is a whole interesting story unto itself. And we've been courting Havanese ever since we acquired our Havanese.
Wow. And make sure I got this right. I know you told me some of this, and I'm going to forget something because you've done so much. You've courted poodles.
Oh, yeah. I have a courted poodle.
There you go. You've courted, did I see Pirscheps, or am I imagining that?
Pirscheps, yeah. We sure have Spanish water dogs, Bergamasco.
So you've literally shown every single breed that you can court or is normally courted.
No, I didn't show those dogs. I courted them for other people.
Oh,
I've only shown Komondors, Poolies, and Havanese, and a toy poodle in courts.
That is so amazing. Okay, so what made you? I mean, Komondor are not, like I grew up with Anna out here. I know about Komondor, but they're not like for everyone. What made you fall in love with a Komondor?
Well, the story goes back to the very inception of the Fuzzy Farm. And by the way, it's Fuzzy Farm, not Fuzzy Farms. We only have one Fuzzy Farm.
My bad.
That's okay. Anyway, we had our very first dog, which was an Old English sheepdog. And that was in 71, and we were brushing our arms off, trying to keep the dog in brush coat. And one day we were walking down the street, and somebody on his porch was also brushing an Old English sheepdog. And we kind of shared thoughts on that. And he said, if you get tired of brushing an Old English sheepdog, what you really want to get is a commander dog. And we said, oh, what? Well, it took some research and translation of his term commander dog till we found what a Komondor was. And from that point, from the very moment we saw what a Komondor was, we said, that's what we want. And while we owned our Old English sheepdog for his entire life, about 13 years, after we acquired our Old English sheepdog a couple of years later, in 1972, we acquired our first Komondor. And there's no looking back. And no, we never had another Old English sheepdog. We don't want an Old English sheepdog. We love the breed. We would never go back to brushing a dog like an Old English sheepdog when you can have a dog of equivalent size or somewhat larger and be able to court it. So it was love at first sight.
And Komondor and Pooley basically go together, right? Like the herding and the guardian breeds of Hungary. So
correct. They're companions to one another.
And do they get along? Like, how do they work together? I just think that's such a fascinating relationship.
Well, the Komondor is the guard dog, and the Pooley the herding dog.
Yes.
And raised together, they get along together. I can't say that you'll never have a dispute, but for the most part, they're very compatible together.
Interesting.
We never had a problem when we had both breeds.
I love that. So you hated brushing, and that's why you went to cords, but maintaining cords is not exactly simple.
Well, it compared to brushing, it is, but you have to understand what a cord is, why a coat cords, and and how to maintain the cord. It's a different discipline. We think it's much easier than brushing, and it's a lifetime of being able to have your dog in a proper coat rather than showing a dog, brushing a dog, showing it and shaving it down because you can't keep up with brushing it anymore.
Hmm.
For the most part, our dogs live their entire lives corded. At the end of life, if we feel that the coat is um, is interfering with their quality of life for whatever reason, or God forbid they have to have major surgery, at that point we will cut the coat down. But for the most part, our dogs live the majority of their lives fully corded and looking like they could go into the show ring at any moment in time.
Fantastic. So, all right, let's talk about Komondor and Pulley specifically. Those cords have a purpose in their original function. Can you talk about that?
Sure. Well, for the most part, we think of cords as being a protection,
Yeah.
protection from predators and a protection. So the coat is very important to the environment and to the work that they do. Comendors are very, because they're protectors of the flock, they do guard against such things as wolves. And a fully corded comendor, not necessarily the length of the coat, but the density of the coat, will prevent the wolf from biting the dog.
Mm.
Um, the the other thing is that Komondors and Puleys in their native Hungary and plains of Hungary deal with very, very difficult weather conditions, and the coat protects them both from the cold as well as from the heat. It's an insulator, so it's a very natural coat for for the dogs to have for their entire life. Now, you might want to transition and say, well, why? And maybe this is not a question you want to ask yet, but why do Havanese cord?
Yeah,
And
that was
it,
so. I mean, Havanese don't have a job that requires courting, right? So what's that about?
well, it's kind of interesting. Havanese first came to this country. Well, the majority of Havanese arrived in this country during the Cuban Revolution, and they arrived in very difficult circumstances.
Mhm.
They arrived coming on very primitive boats from Cuba to this country, dealing with very difficult um, inhospitable conditions. And
Mm.
actually, when they arrived here, their coats, they didn't have sprays and brushes and pin brushes and wonderful grooming sprays on the boats with them. They were there for their survival along with their precious little dogs. Many of the dogs arrived corded because their coats matted. And it may have been a very primitive looking cord, but it was nevertheless cording as a result of harsh weather and lack of modern grooming techniques. So when they arrived here, many of them were corded in a natural cording formation. And the people who were really responsible for promoting the breed were familiar with cords themselves because they had comendors, and so it was a very natural thing for them to have these, call it scruffy looking dogs that became corded very easily. And
Right.
cording, and this is very interesting to know, ever since way, way, way before AKC recognition, every standard for the Havanese in this country has always included cording as a coat presentation option. So it's not something that anybody created
Hmm.
in a modern sense. It was here from courting is in our standard from the very, very beginning, just as courting in poodles is in their standard from well over 100 years, well over a
Wow.
hundred years.
Wow.
So it's part of the proper um, recognition of the history of the breed and the presentation of the breed.
Well, and talk a little bit about the coat type that cords, right? Like poodles are very specific. They have poodles hair. Are the other breeds that cord also hair, not fur, non-shedding, or are some of them more of that combined coat? Like I know I've read about the flocks, right, in the Spanish water dog, and those feel like they're a little different. So talk us through some of the hair types because I think that's absolutely fascinating.
To cord any breed, you really need a coat that is a double texture, an undercoat and an outer coat.
Okay.
And the undercoat is a softer coat. It's more cottony. The outer coat is wavier, and it takes the wave of the outer coat to wind its way around the softer undercoat to create the cord. The cord itself is a shedded coat, so it's a matter of as the coat grows and this wavier outer coat winds its way around the more cottony undercoat.
Hmm.
That's what's creating this. Call it a mat.
Yeah.
It's a mat, and it's an elongated mat.
Hmm.
The thickness of the mat is sometimes it's natural as to whether or not a dog has a thick cord or a thinner cord, but for the most part, it's how you divide these these mats that occur that will determine the thickness of the cord.
They're sort of like curated mats.
Yeah, you could say that, and
um,
sometimes what we see today is people who have, and I love that word, curated, have over curated, have over groomed the mat, so that it looks like a strand of spaghetti. And while that's very beautiful on the look and the go around as the dog flies around the ring,
mm,
it's really not. Um, it's not utilitarian in that the thinner the cord, the more easily uh, pulled out it will be, and
right.
it's much more delicate. So,
They break
our
when they get that thin, Alice? Do the cords just
yeah,
break?
yeah, exactly. So we prefer in all of our breeds, our Komondors, Poolies, and Havanese, to have a cord that's at least the width of a finger. So not we don't want to see angel hair spaghetti, nor do we want to see something the size of your fist.
Mm,
Um, but we like to see cords about the width, about finger's width, and seem to stay stronger
mm,
and move very effectively with the dog,
mhm.
and are pretty resistant to the elements.
Okay, that's really, really fascinating. So, walk us through like we talked a little bit about why we're courting these dogs. Let's talk about how you do it. I told you when we were talking about this one time a million years ago at a pet grooming shop, we had a couple poolies come in that they wanted brushed and then they wanted corded and then they wanted, and I'm like, y'all can't do this. Like this is not okay. So talk to us, yeah, like walk us through the concept of starting a cord, splitting the cords, maintaining the cords, how to keep them from pulling right at parts. I just think this is so fascinating.
Those are all very good questions. You mentioned that somebody brought pulleys in to be brushed or corded or whatever. I would like to say that it's very important to note that the pulley standard for the Pulley Club of America in the United States is the only we're the only country in the world that permits pulleys to be shown brushed.
Mm.
Um, and that's that's a whole other podcast, I guess, as to the history as to why that happened and how that came to me. But we are the only country that will allow you to show a pulley in either a brushed or a corded coat.
Mm.
Komondors, on the other hand, it is in the standard that it would be a disqualification if the coat isn't corded by age 2.
Oh wow.
So Komondors have to be shown corded. Uh, Pulleys can be shown brushed or corded, And same thing with Havanese, they can be shown brushed or corded. Um, Now, back to your question of you asked, how do you get it to cord?
Yeah, well, yeah, they have to start, right? I mean, having watched, so Anna Quigley's friend, having watched people do this, like they start, they're fluffy, and then they start turning into chords, and then you have to define the chords, right? Like, I just think this is the most fascinating process. So talk us through it.
Okay, well, the first thing we tell people is, and this is the hardest concept for people to learn,
Mm.
throw the brush away. Everybody
Oh
has
my God,
a,
that's so hard.
it's so hard, exactly. It's so, and if we can convince you, if you want to have a corded dog, you have to stop brushing. There's no cheating, there's no way around it. If you're going to brush, the coat is going to be a wreck and it's not going to cord looking good. So
Mm.
throw the brush away. And then my next instruction to people is at around 5 or 6 months, in any of the breeds, Commodores, Poolies, or Havanese, or Poodles,
Mm.
uh, mist the coat every day with a either just a plain light water spray or a leave-in conditioner. Just mist lightly. Let it air dry if it's lightly misted. And wait. And that's the hardest thing because it's the waiting process that people find very discouraging in that we're a show and go society. You want to buy a dog, you want to take it into the show ring and you want to win. Well, that's not going to happen with any of the corded breeds. They look like they're fluffy puppies. They're very cute and they might do some winning then, but then the waiting process begins. And that's really the hard thing to teach people is the patience that's required to have a corded dog look good in
Right.
a corded coat. And that can take, so how long does it take? We're often
Yeah.
asked,
Yeah.
how long is this going to take me? And I'm going to say that to be barely showable, it's going to take 1 year to be barely showable. To be competitive as a special, you're talking 3+ years.
Wow.
And it's very difficult to say to anybody of any age, whether it's a young family acquiring a dog or somebody who's 40, 50, 60 years old, who's been showing dogs for some time, that, okay, you want to show your dog, hold on to it for 3 years. But then I often talk to people who have large sporting breeds, and they're the first ones to tell you that their dogs are really not competitive in the ring. And I don't want to mention other breeds, but they're not competitive until they're 4 or 5 years old, maybe 6 years old.
I tell you,
Until they
Spinoni are their most competitive from 4 to 6. So what is your process then with some of these? Do you finish them at like 9 months old and then cord them? So finish them in their puppy fluff, or what's your strategy for that?
Yes, could be. That's a very good point. Our going from small to big,
Yeah.
our Havanese we tend to finish rather early if when we can find majors. Right now there are no majors, but so finishing our Havanese at 6, 7, 8, 9 months is not unusual for us, and that would be a good time to start courting them or letting them cord. Uh, Poolies, the same thing. They're really cute, fluffy,
Hmm.
but uh, the rarer the breed, like Poolies and Commodores,
Hmm.
it's years before you can find enough points to finish a
Hmm.
championship. So it's a hard judgment, and very often an excellent Poolie won't finish until they're 3, 4, or 5 years old, until you can get to enough specialties and pick up enough majors. And the same thing with Commodores, because Commodores look like big white bears until they start to cord, and then the hard thing with Commodores, and I'm kind of jumping back and forth amongst the three breeds that I've worked with. The hard thing with Commodores is keeping them clean, and
Yes.
so
Okay,
if
this
you
was
let,
just, I was just going to get to this. So I met Anna Quigley when I was a kid, right? Like I saw her at the dog show with this big, and I'm like, what in the heck? Right? And so my mom and I talked to her. The dog's got socks over its feet. And I'm like, how do you wash that thing? She's like, well, I take it to the car wash. I'm like, ah.
Well,
So, so,
I don't know
so
that she did that, but we
I,
certainly,
I'm pretty sure
we
she was messing with our heads, but it was just incredible. So talk us through, like seriously, how do you keep a big white dog with hair on the ground? I mean, that is, to me, that seems daunting.
it is daunting, and which is why we no longer, after 32 years of owning Komondors, we reached our old age and said we can't do this anymore. So when our last Komondor passed, we did not replace it, and we stayed with black poolies, and
Yes.
and
Not
uh,
white poolies, black
and
poolies.
and black, well, black and white Havanese. I mean, we learned our
Yeah.
lesson trying to keep white Commodores white. It's a very difficult process, and my hat's off to those people who are still showing Commodores corded, and they're white and they're spectacularly lovely. It is truly a massive job to keep the white coat white because the nature of the cord is that it is a sponge. So it's porous, and if you walk a fully corded dog through a mud puddle, you're going to have cords that are, 6 inches long of muds
Yeah.
from the bottom up. So it's very daunting, and you have to keep shirts on them and them tied up. It's a big process, and really, my hats off to those people who still can keep it. And very few. We're seeing fewer and fewer young people coming into the breed, and it's the older folks are getting older, and it's getting
Hmm.
harder for them. So it's a difficult process of how to perpetuate a breed that is so difficult to
Yeah.
keep clean.
Yeah.
So that
So
is
what do you do? I mean, how do you, or how did you wash a Commodore that, it's just being a dog
well,
and now it's got a mud puddle on its face?
we have a bathtub.
Mm.
What we purchased was what's called an apartment-sized bathtub. So it's a little smaller than a standard bathtub,
Okay.
and we have it raised on cement blocks
Hmm.
and shielded in. It's very nice. It looks very nice. You wouldn't know
Hmm.
it was on cement blocks. So it's chest high. And
Hmm.
by being chest high, we don't have to bend into the tub. Years ago, when we were youths in our 20s, we had a small house and a bathtub, and we used to hang over the bathtub and wash the dog with a handheld shower spray. But over the years, we've gotten much smarter and built a
Mm.
bathtub high up, and we use a high pressure water spray hose, the type that you use um, in an industrial kitchen
Hmm.
restaurant to hose down dishes. So it's on
Okay.
it's on a big hose, and it's very, very high pressure, and we can get basically anything clean with that high pressure hose.
And do you use
And
soap on it, or is that
oh
just
yeah.
not okay? All right.
Well, the analogy I give people when talking them through this process, and people are always at dog shows, for example, saying, "How do you wash it?"
Right.
is that
Right.
you have to envision how do you wash a heavy sweater? And you wash a heavy sweater by putting it in a tub, a sink, a basin
Mm.
with water, um, getting some whatever suds you're using for your sweater,
Mm.
and kind of swish it through, and excuse me, the the
I
the
love
real
you. I love your ringtone. Oh my god, that's hysterical.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
The the difficult process is rinsing,
Mm.
and it because as you know, again, imagine the sweater is that it's very hard to get the soap out. So you have to start by using a low suds shampoo, and we do use a low suds dog shampoo,
Mm.
and then we rinse and we rinse and we rinse some more
Yeah.
until it runs clear. And then we will use a leave in conditioner so we don't have to rinse that out. For very highly stained areas, we'll use things like Dawn
Mm.
dishwashing soap. There are also some very good um, dog products that are made for stains in coats that we've used effectively. Uh, but the real trick is to keep the dog clean.
Right. Like
And
never let it get dirty.
well, avoid at all costs. So if you're thinking of, gee, I really want to go running through the woods with my Komondor, this is not the breed for you.
Please don't do that.
Please don't do that. And you have to think ahead of the process. So you have to say, oh, there's a mud puddle over there. I'm not going to walk over there. You really have to be very ingenious as to how to keep the dog clean, but still let the dog have a life.
Sure.
And we have we have a bit of property, and we have 2 yards. We have a yard that's grass to the most extent we can keep grass there,
Sure.
and then we have a yard fully gated that's stone, small
Pea gravel or something.
pea gravel, so that in inclement weather, and here in New England, we have snow, we have rain, we have you name it, we have it. We keep them on gravel and stone, and they really come back very, very dry. We also have pop-up tents in our yards, so with gating around them, so that in really bad weather they're covered overhead. We do not have runs. We don't have kennel runs. We're not a kennel kind of house. Our dogs all live in our house. They do have a room we refer to as the dog room, but we don't have outside runs. We have gated yard areas for them, because we really feel that exercise is incredibly important, and runs just would not work for us. So that's how. So we're
So you
always
keep
trying to
them
keep
tied up, right? When they go out, they've got outfits and ties, like big hair ties. Is that how I've seen?
Yeah,
Is that what you
big
use?
scrunchy elastic
Mm-hmm.
that we tie, and then on the poolies, our poolies happen to have extremely heavy coats. Um, for the poolies, we use like a vet wrap kind of thing that goes around bulks of the cords, so that when the boys lift their legs, they're not wetting the bulk of the cords. Some people find it effective to tie the cords over their backs. I don't. I find that thins the coat. I do everything I possibly can to not cause stress on the cords themselves. You asked a question before, which I wanted to get back to, which was how, how does the coat develop out from the skin?
Yeah.
Every corded dog that I've ever seen, every breed, the first maybe ½ inch to an inch of the cord is actually not tight. It's not corded. It's soft. It doesn't actually start to form a cord until it's about a ½ to 3/4 of an inch away from the skin. So people who are concerned about, isn't this bad for the coat? Isn't this bad for the skin? The answer is no. There's full air circulation at the skin, so it's not hot. It's not tight. It's not like when you put a ponytail in a little kid and they say, "Oh, it hurts! It hurts." It's much softer than that, and it's really really wide open. And the just to circle back again with Havanese, Havanese is known for having a silky coat, and people are always saying, how do you, if it's corded, how can you tell if it's silky? And I always say, touch them at the base of the cord and feel it with your thumb. Just stroke that beginning part of the cord, and you can see how silky it is. It's not woolly, it's not wiry, it's not harsh. It's silky, and all of a sudden, like the light goes on, and they say, "Oh my goodness, you're absolutely right. Feel that." So over the years, I've trained enough judges, got on those, that it's always a pleasure to see them go to the top line of the dog and use their thumb, the edge of their thumb, to feel along the beginning part of the cord to admire how beautifully silky that coat is. And it's not a matter of cord formation because the coat is harsh. It's a matter of cord formation because there are 2 types of coat. It's a wavier coat, which the Havanese must have a wave to the coat, and the undercoat. So many people today are seeing coats in their show ring that unfortunately have been flat ironed, so they don't see this beautiful, beautiful wave. the coat is required, whether it's brushed or corded, to stand away from the body because we really it's such a beautiful. It's the undercoat and this wavier outer coat, which makes it such a beautiful breed. And to see it destroyed by a flat iron to make it something that it's not is really heartbreaking. But the corded coat in the Havanese is a natural outcome of having that double coat, the wavy coat and the softer, more cottony undercoat. So I know I kind of backed around
No, that's
several of.
okay. That's great. We do a lot of going down rabbit holes on this show, so it's all good. Okay, so I wanted to go back too. I wanted to talk about, because I found this fascinating when we were doing the pet groom on those pulleys in Nebraska, that they use like a knitting needle or some, the way to split the cords, right? When you're trying to maintain the cords to keep them right. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I've never heard of using a knitting needle, nor do I use a knitting needle, but to separate sometimes the matting,
Mm,
um, I won't say that it's been neglected, but if you find that the coat has come together and you really, it looks too wide and
mm-hmm,
you want to
mm-hmm.
separate it. Over the years, and my husband and I both have extensive arthritis in our thumbs from pulling coat apart by
Right.
hand. So what we have used fairly effectively more recently is an L-shaped letter opener. It's one of these little plastic gizmos that has that
Yeah.
kind of just has a point on one end and kind of looks like an L shape,
Mm-hmm.
and it has the blade in between, and it's perfectly safe because the only thing that's ever touching the dog's skin is the plastic part
Yeah.
of the blade. And we buy those in the dollar store in the uh, office supply department of your dollar store. You can pick them up usually two for $1,
Yeah.
or never more than $1 each. You can buy them by the truckload, and when they get dull, you can just throw them out. Or you can buy them from some of the top dog show product companies in the world, and you can buy them for $40 or $50. We kind of like the ones that run two for $1, and get rid of them when they get dull. So back to the question is, when we find our thumbs can no longer
Mm-hmm.
work to split a cord, we resort to doing that. Just being very careful not to make them too thin. As I said before, we personally, I'm not being critical of anyone else's
Mm-hmm.
decision, but uh, Steve and Alice Lawrence personally don't like these really skinny spaghetti cords because if they get hooked on a foot or trapped in a door frame or a drawer and you find the cord on the floor, it's heartbreaking. So
Yeah.
we hardly ever lose a cord accidentally as a result of keeping our cords, again, the width of the finger.
Sure, sure. And but that is a maintenance process, right? Like you have to intentionally make them that size, or talk about that a little bit.
Well, that's interesting. I think it varies somewhat dog by dog, breed by breed.
Mm,
Um, my kudos go to, and my hat goes off to the poodle world.
mhm.
Poodles of all the breeds I've ever been associated with, that I've ever courted for people, and I have now courted for people, standards, minis, and toys, my own toy, is that poodles court better and faster than any other breed I've ever worked with. They are a natural courted breed. Now, unfortunately, and the poodle people themselves who are upfront and honest, some of the coats are just terrible, and which is why you see so much hairspray and teasing and this and that. Poodles, many poodles have wonderful coats, and those that do will cord. Close your eyes. 3 weeks, that dog is corded.
Oh my God.
So I mean, they are the fastest breed.
Wow.
My toy poodle, for various unfortunate reasons, has been shaved to the skin 3 times in her lifetime and has grown cords down to the floor 3 times. I mean, she's an absolutely incredible coat and very
That's a hair
fast. So
machine, man.
yeah, exactly. Um, poodles, if you want to play with a dog to court it,
Yeah.
work with a poodle first because it will teach you everything you need to know and do it fast.
Yeah.
So I'm very uh, I'm in awe of the of that breed from the coat alone, because their coats are just naturally courtable coats. Again, for a correct coat,
Sure,
and
sure.
those of that have an incorrect coat, I can't help with anything.
We can't help
Keep brushing,
Can't
folks.
help
Keep
you.
brushing. Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Um, so just kind of final topic, just from your, like, you've worked and helped other people with some of the newer breeds, the Bergamascos, the Pierce Sheps, the Spanish Water Dogs, some of these, and those are quite different than poodles or Havanese or even Commodores and Poolie. So can you talk a little bit about the differences in their coats, like flocks versus cords versus this versus that? Because to me, it's all a little bit Greek.
Well, it's interesting that you asked that. Yes, uh, of those three that you mentioned, the Spanish Water Dog, the Bergamasco, and the the
Mm,
Pyrenean Shepherd, the Spanish Water Dog is more like the breeds that I'm most familiar with.
okay.
It's more like and I hope they won't shoot me for saying it's more like a poodle coat. Remember, the Spanish Water Dog, it gets clipped down every year,
Yeah.
so
Right.
then at its full growth will look and be more corded. So it's got those Spanish Water Dogs have beautiful coats. It's a wonderful breed, and they cord relatively easily because of the nature of the coat. So
Well,
to me, their coat is more like a poodle coat than it would be like a Bergamasco coat.
okay.
The Pierre Shep has two, and to some degree, and the Bergamasco too has two different types of coats. It has a straighter, more goat-like hair.
Yeah,
Uh,
the goat hair.
the
That's
goat hair.
just
Um,
fascinating.
it's kind of and I don't mean this negatively, but it's a coarser hair,
Right. Sure.
uh, intermingled with the softer, denser hair that, and again, the Bergamasco call it phlox.
Hmm.
You can call it anything you want. It's a cord.
Really.
It's a more natural cord in that it's not defined. It's not sculpted. It's not trimmed.
Mm-hmm.
It just is what it is. Um, and they choose to refer to it as phlox.
Hmm.
To me, anything that is dense um, and kind of clumped together is
Hmm.
my terminology is a cord. Call it what you
Right.
want, but they call it phlox, and it's just a matter of coat that mats together. The Bergamasco coat is, and I'm not in it. Please believe me, I'm not an expert in Bergamasco or Pierre Sheps
Right.
or Spanish
Right.
Water Dogs.
Right. I
So
just,
I,
to
I'm just
me, it's
adding
just
my.
fascinating, this whole category of the dreadlock dogs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I
exactly,
think they're great.
and people, I think, we used to get very offended by having, when dreadlocks on people became more popular,
Sure.
people and dogs became a little offended that anyone would say that their dog, oh, does your dog have dreadlocks? Well, we're now just talking about definitions.
Yeah.
If you want to
Yeah.
call them dreadlocks, call them dreadlocks, call them anything you want. This is what they are.
Yeah.
And I don't get offended by anything. I don't get offended if people say, oh, your dog has flocks, and I don't correct them, say, call it. Yeah,
Right.
we call them cords, you call them flocks.
It's all the same.
What the heck? It's all the same. That it's they look different on different dogs, and the hair on the Bergamasco is different, and they like their flocks,
Yes.
wide,
Yeah. Yeah.
small, and I
Yeah.
think the Puli coat and the Commodore coat is more perhaps looks more elegant because it's more uniform
Hmm.
in the way it's formatted.
Hmm.
Um, and again, I think the thing about these coats, whether it's the poodle coat, Commodore, Puli, Havanese, um, is that it's not for everybody's taste. And
Yeah.
we acknowledge that.
Sure.
Not everybody is going to love it the way I love it.
Right.
And I truly do I love the corded look on the dogs when it's maintained correctly. I don't like a dirty Commodore. Not at all. It's horrible. I
They
don't like a
smell bad,
Puli
man.
who's, we see a lot of Poolies who've had so much stress put on their coat that they have and Commodores too, they have a saddle along the top that they've lost all their top coat along the top line. I don't like that look.
Mhm.
So a well-maintained coat, regardless of the breed, uh, is very beautiful to me. A poorly maintained coat is not beautiful, and that's the same thing,
But I
with
think that's true of
with
any
any
coat
breed.
type. A
Ex-
wire coat, a drop coat. Good maintenance is good maintenance is good maintenance, right?
Exactly. And, I think that some people feel that you can get away with more uh, neglect in a
Mm.
corded coat than you could if it was a Lhasa Apso or a Shih Tzu or, or anything else. And it's not true. A well-maintained coat is a well-maintained coat regardless of the breed.
Mm.
So I really I find a beautifully corded coat wonderful, and it's exciting to me, and I can't say enough good things about it. I think a poorly maintained brush coat is horrible, and so it's really a matter of preference and
Yeah.
taste, and I'm not saying I'm right and the all these other breeds are wrong, not at all.
I do, but this is why I wanted to talk to you is just loving cords as a concept is not something you see everywhere. And I wanted to hear about that because I think that is fascinating. I love wire coated breeds. All of my breeds are wire coated wire hair pointer, wire haired Ibethan, Spinoni. Like,
Exactly,
I want wire haired dogs. I like them. So,
absolutely.
I think that that's part of what makes the purebred dog world go around, Alice, is that there's a little something for anybody.
Absolutely, absolutely, and if it brings a smile to your face,
Yeah.
it's worth everything. So it's a joy. My husband Steve and I are the only people we think in the world who hold the record of having best in show ribbons at all breed shows on three different corded breeds: Commodores, Poolies, and Havanese. We have yet to see any record of anybody else achieving that. We really love the breeds, and we love our breeds, and we love them corded. And I do. People say, "Well, don't you have any Havanese that are brushed?" And I certainly do have Havanese that are brushed, and I maintain that it's important to have both brushed Havanese as well as corded Havanese. It's the nature of the breed. I would probably
This
never
is
own a
one of
brush.
the questions I was talking to somebody about. Like, do you cord a Havanese with a better top line? And like, what's the strategy on that? Like head, top line, which one do you do for like when do you braid the brushed one? Like, I just find all that completely fascinating.
Well, that may be another podcast. Is maintaining the Havanese code.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. All
I,
right.
I
We'll do a
think that
whole podcast on which ones you do how in the Havanese and why. I love
yeah,
that.
exactly. I think that there's no hiding a bad top line with a corded coat. So if the dog doesn't have a correct top line, you probably don't want to cord it.
Yeah.
It's same thing with Poolies and Commodores. If they have a bad top line,
Mhm.
those breeds are going to stick out like a sore thumb because there's no hiding a bad top line. You can, in these brush breeds, especially brush breeds with lots of coat, you
Yeah.
can hide
You
anything.
can do anything, man.
Yeah, cords are less forgiving. So, um, I think that kudos to people who cord their dogs because they really have to have good ones
Mm.
in order to win with a
Yeah.
corded coat. First of all, many judges don't like cords in any breed. I've shown poolies to judges who say to me, "Do I have to touch it?"
Oh,
It's just
that's so
it's
awful.
some people find it revolting. Um, I get that, and I'm sad, and I have a list of those judges that I don't
Yes,
show
I keep a
dogs
list,
to.
man.
Or,
You are
yeah.
on my blacklist.
No, no, you're on my do not show to list. And or I say do not show cords to.
Yes.
They may be fine with brush dogs, but or puppies, but
Mhm.
if they don't like a fully coated dog, regardless of the breed, I know who they are.
Pointless. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
and please tell me. If you
Yeah.
don't like cords, please tell me right
Share.
off the bat. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Wow.
I've yet. It is very uncommon. I can't tell you the last time I saw a mature brushed pulley in the ring. Generally, pulleys are
I
today all brushed.
don't know
They
that
used
I
to
think
all
I've
corded.
seen one in 40 years in dogs. I think I've only ever seen one.
Exactly, and their coats are really hard to maintain
Mm.
brushed. And the origin of that, well, I won't, again, it's a whole other story. But when the pulleys were being brushed in this country, they were bred to have what were called open coats. They actually looked more like bearded collie coats
Oh wow.
than like pulley coats. And then as the corded coat, as more dogs became imported from Hungary,
Mhm.
and corded coats became more fashionable and more acceptable,
Mhm.
um, the it was much easier to win with a corded pulley than a brush pulley, and
Mm.
fewer people were breeding pulleys for open coats.
Mhm.
So it was even harder and harder because now you're keeping this giant fluff ball brushed out, and it was really very difficult. So you hardly ever see a brush pulley. I can't tell you, it's probably 30, 40 years ago since I
Yeah,
saw one in.
seriously. I mean, it's not my breed, not my group, but I think I've only ever seen one. Um, all right. Well, Alice, I have taken a whole bunch of your time, and I just
My
cannot tell
pleasure.
you how much I appreciate it. I love the best part about my job, and I said this earlier, best part about my job is to get to talk to passionate people about what they love. And that is never going to be a bad day at my job.
Well, please, anytime. I mean, courting is my thing. I'm called the Queen of Chords, and people from all over the world contact me about how to court whatever breed it is they're trying to court, and I love helping people do it, and I love talking about it, and um, you know, whatever I can do to encourage people to show their dog the way it should be shown is very important to me. So, anytime.
Thanks so much.